Good morning, it's Barbara. I'm back home with my gizmo and I'm going outside. Good morning, it's Barbara. Thank you for joining me for coffee. Home again, jiggity jig. I got my train from Tuscaloosa to Philadelphia. Got in last night at 4-ish and I got home at 6-ish, at 6-ish. And now I'm home. Thank you for joining me for coffee. It's good to be home. The road trip with Christy was terrific, and it really was a good idea. And it turns out that the Milky Way lives in Bryce Canyon. So if you're ever looking for the Milky Way, I highly recommend Bryce Canyon, because Christy and I did it just right for our situation. We drove. It was a long day. It was my worst day of the driving of the road trip. Was the first day of driving, because we went from Boise to Bryce Canyon, and I think it was 600 miles. It was a long day, and I had just spent a week and a half sitting in really uncomfortable chairs in hospitals and nursing homes without doing very much exercise at all. I mean, I took a couple walks, but they weren't enough for a week and a half. And so my legs were in pretty bad shape. And I had my compression socks with me on the trip, and I don't know why I didn't wear them in the hospital. I should have. But so my legs were not feeling great, and it was a long drive. We left about 9:30 in the morning, and we got to the Bryce Canyon Lodge about 8 o'clock, I think. Almost a little before 8 o'clock at night, with a few stops, obviously, for gas and stretching our legs. So that was not a good day for my legs. It was uncomfortable, and I was wearing my compression socks in the car. But we got to Bryce Canyon, and we had a lovely little cabin, and yeah, and then we had dinner at the lodge restaurant. I have to say the lodge restaurant was a bit of a disappointment, but I mean, it wasn't terrible. But these kinds of national park lodges that aren't particularly cheap, I mean, they're not super expensive, but it was a little bit of a splurge. We're supposed to have pretty good food, and we were a little disappointed. But we didn't leave the area the whole time we were there, so we ate there, and it was fine. The burgers were delicious. So we had dinner, and it rained Thursday. That was the Thursday. It rained Thursday night. And we realized, Christy pointed out what a good thing it was that we were staying right there at the lodge, right, so we walked from our cabin to the rim of Bryce Canyon, and it was amazing. And it was so great that we had picked to stay there rather than at some hotel that was off the national park grounds. Because Friday, when it poured rain, and then it was sunny, and then it poured rain, and then it was sunny, and then it poured rain, and then it was sunny. It was the craziest weather. But we were able to just duck into our cabin when it was pouring rain, and then when it stopped raining, we went back out for beautiful canyon views. So if we had a hotel 5 miles away, that just wouldn't have worked out really well. So that was our full day there, and so that worked out pretty well. Christy had wanted to take a hike down the canyon, but it was too muddy and icky and dangerous on Friday because of the rains. But other than that, it all worked out. And the skies cleared completely at stargazing time, and we were able to commune with the universe and saw the Milky Way. It was great. And then on Saturday, we ended up both being awake at sunrise, so we went to watch the sunrise in Bryce Canyon, which is the thing. And Christy got a little hike in that day, and beautiful, clear day. You wouldn't know it had rained off and on the whole day yesterday, the day before that, and there was no mud. It was just, it all got absorbed. It was pretty amazing. So we got, I don't know what time we left on Saturday, but we ended up driving to Albuquerque, New Mexico. So we drove from Bryce Canyon to Albuquerque, New Mexico, which was 500 and some miles, so it wasn't quite. And from Bryce Canyon to Christy's house, we had 1,700 miles to cover and 3 days to do it. So we needed to put in some good driving days, and we did. But by that time, I had hiked around Bryce Canyon for a day and a half, and my legs were better. One thing this trip has pointed out to me is I really do need to start paying closer attention to getting in good shape and taking care of my body. Anyway, so we stayed in Albuquerque in a not 5-star place by the highway with a 3-year-old exactly above us tramping around. We called and said, can we just, Christy went to get us a new room, and they said, oh, we'll call them. If it doesn't stop, we'll change you. And it did stop, but we weren't thinking because it started again at 6 o'clock in the morning. It was one little 3-year-old. I was expecting it maybe to be twins, but when I went down to the breakfast room, they were down there, and it was one 3-year-old. It was adorable. And there weren't that many people in the hotel. I mean, there's no reason they couldn't have moved us easily, but it was fine. It was fine. We were fine. We stayed in a nicer place the next night. The next night, we drove all the way to Arkansas. So we drove from Albuquerque to Fort Smith, Arkansas, which is it was exit 5 of I-40. We were driving along I-40. Exit 5 of I-40, which means it was 5 miles inside the Arkansas border. So we drove through part of New Mexico, and then Texas Panhandle, Oklahoma, and 5 miles into Arkansas. And that left us with a shorter day on Monday. We left from Fort Smith to Christy's house, and so we got there before dinner time, and we had puppies to cuddle and sons-in-law to cuddle, and Rich is the best. He just he was so thoughtful, worked so hard to make me feel welcome. I mean, he was just very careful to make sure there was food in the house that was appropriate for me, and he even made me bougie ice for my cocktail. He's the best. The little round ice cubes. I had given Christy, I had a rubber mold for round ice cubes, and then I got a refrigerator that makes them. We call that bougie ice, the round ice cubes. And so he had gotten her ice cube maker and made sure that I had bougie ice for my cocktail. He's the best. He is the best. So anyway, so we had a lovely evening. Christy was home. Wicket was so glad to see her. And he cuddled his Nana a little bit too. Wicket is their little dog. He's like a little Benji dog. He's the cutest thing ever. And then on Tuesday, Christy had work to do in the morning. She had to go to the office, and I repacked my stuff. We had packed her car so full of stuff from my sister that it was almost impossible. Well, it was completely impossible for her to see through the car. So she had limited, mirror vision, which is stressful. And it was hard to get things in and out, like just to grab our night bags. Each night we were there, excuse me, I have the hiccups. But my sister was an artist, and she was a glass artist, she was a ceramics artist, but she was also a fiber artist. And so she had many fibery things for Christy. And I'm sure I said this to you when I vlogged from her house, that it felt pretty ghoulish, but she was very insistent that we take her stuff. I mean, she had plans. She had, I was responsible for deciding about the colon stuff, which is my side of the family, and her stepson was responsible for the Popkey side of the family, which was her husband's. And she really was very interested in making sure that her things went to someone who would love them. So we were doing her wishes. I mean, in the last conversation we had with her, which was Sunday morning, she had had a bad night Saturday night, and we were shocked, but she was lucid on Sunday morning. And she, her last conversations were, she and Christy talking about the clothes that she wanted Christy to take and things like that. So it felt ghoulish, but it was her wish that we take her things that we would love to have and would use. And so Christy got 2 looms, and I have boxes of ceramics that she and Rich are going to bring with them when they come at Christmas, of her stuff and her teacher's stuff. Anyway, so the car was packed completely full. Hey puppy, put your foot down. Yeah, you know better than that. I got home and got some puppy cuddles, right? Did I get puppy cuddles? Actually, Dennis did a smart thing. He put the dogs in the car to come pick me up at the train station, so that our first meeting was, like through the car window and stuff, because they can be very rambunctious with a homecoming, very rambunctious with a homecoming. And so a lot of that was dissipated by the rambunctious homecoming in the car, which is less violent. Right, puppy? Did I come home? I told you I was coming home. I got Maisie on my lap. So anyway, the car being packed so full made it a little stressful, but we got it home, and I think everything got home in good shape. So yesterday morning I unpacked my bags, which was full of ceramic stuff, and put it in a box for them to bring, and repacked my bags for a train trip, so that I could manage my backpack and my rolly bag. And Christy drove me to the train. And I took the train from Tuscaloosa to Philadelphia, and it was very nice. It was very nice. The ride from Philadelphia home, which is a commuter rail line, and in the United States, that's not a luxury train ride by any stretch. And of course, I got there at rush hour, so it was completely packed, and I have 2 bags. And anyway, I'm home. But this morning, I got a really lovely email of condolence from Jane, who is a table mate of my parents at Harmony, who loved my dad's company and storytelling, and you know, my dad was the life of the party at their table. My mom was quiet, you know, but he just made such a difference to their meal times because they're both, Jane and Helen are both quiet, and Jim. So it was like the five of them, and Charlie, Jane's husband, but he passed a few months ago. And I think they really miss my dad and my parents at that table. The two people that sit there now look very puss-faced, to be honest. Look like grumpy old people. But anyway, I got a really nice email of condolence from Jane this morning saying how not only the residents miss my mother, but the staff. And they put a picture at reception of her. And it made me realize, and I'm sorry, that the road trip was important to me, and really, I'm so glad I did it. But rather than processing, that road trip really more postponed. Gave me a little distance, I guess, but postponed. That I haven't really, I'm just really starting grieving for the loss of my mother. I feel bad that John and I were both out of town at the time. I mean, neither of us would have been with her. She died in her sleep peacefully. But, you know, I feel bad, but I don't. I mean, I wouldn't, you know, Mama wouldn't wanted us there, you know, to kiss her dead forehead when we were, you know, sitting vigil for my sister. But my mother never knew that Christy was that ill, and Christy didn't know that my sister Christy, not to be confusing, never knew that Mama had passed. We were careful not to let her know when she was awake. And so I realized this morning, getting this lovely email I forwarded to my brothers and my kids, that I haven't really grieved properly or processed properly the death of my mother. My sister was right there, front and center. As was important, you know, she needed us at that moment, but yeah. Yeah, and to be honest, most of the thinking about Mama's passing has been worrying about being her executor and not quite getting to the emotional processing that needs to happen. So this morning started out with a cry. I have to find my eye patches. Christy got us these eye things, reusable eye things that help. I'm going to buy a cucumber. You know, I got to go to the store today. I'll buy a cucumber for my eyes. A lot of crying last few weeks. So anyway, that's the story of my travels. The Milky Way was amazing, and it was worth every stitch in my leg. And spending the time with Christy helped. I am so grateful for her support. I cannot tell you. I hope she felt supported by me too, because of course she lost her aunt and her grandmother. But it made a big difference to me to have her there, as you can well imagine. So I'm home now. I have some things to do today because I came home and Dennis is like, well, we don't have any dog food left. Today was the last day, and we, you know. And the other thing that happened, small, tiny, annoying on this trip, was my library card got canceled at the very beginning of the trip. So I couldn't take out ebooks or books to listen to. I keep calling them books on tape. audiobooks. And in the 2.5 weeks that I was gone, all my holds came in and I couldn't take them out. Everything came in. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to read them all, but so I have to go to the library today and renew my library card, but it was like the worst timing ever. So that's my plan for out of the house today, is sit on this deck, go to the store to buy dog food and whatever else is on the list, and go to the library and renew my library card. And I have one executor thing to do that I need to check. Because I have this idea that things are going to be really screwy. But I can find that out if I just log in to my computer. So I dragged my computer all around. My backpack was really heavy because it had my computer. I didn't take it out once. My phone is such a computer these days. It does everything. I was even able to cancel my flight back with no trouble on my phone, and But I would have needed it if I didn't drag it around. It just made my backpack heavy. So. Oh, I forgot. I was going to show you. The beautiful yarn that I bought in Boise. I wound it by hand on the trip down to Bryce Canyon, and it got a little tangled. I actually cut it twice while I was winding it. It's okay. I know how to add, a new yarn to a project, so it was fine. And I, had thought about it. I talked to you about maybe doing a rectangular shawl kind of thing, which had been what I was doing for my mother. I frogged the project for my mother, and I gave Christy the yarn for her Arts Council thrift store. But the yarn I bought is amazingly similar in color scheme. But when I thought about it, I realized that I didn't want to knit a rectangular shawl. And I feel like I talked about last winter or the winter before how much I was enjoying wearing my cowls in the wintertime, because just that on my shoulders is enough, because I wear my sweaters and they're warm, but I need just a little high shoulder neck coverage, and so I was really enjoying my cowls. So I decided to make a cowl, and I will show it to you tomorrow. But on the trip down, we listened to audio mysteries the whole time we were driving. The mysteries went on within 5 minutes of us starting on the road, which in a way is one of the reasons why I feel like my processing didn't happen in exactly the way it might have had I been alone, because I have a tendency to not listen to things for a long time and think. But, with the mystery starting immediately, I didn't do as much thinking as I might have done given how long we were in the car. But I wound the yarn, and then I cast on, I don't know how many stitches, but it was divisible by 4, because I started with a 2x2 rib, and then I tried to figure out what it was doing, and I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'll show it to you. It's like a broken rib, or it's like a big moss stitch. It's a 2x2 rib for 4 rows, and then I switch. And it's a 2x2 rib, but where I was previously purling, now I'm knitting and such. So it gives it a texture that is not really I'll show it to you tomorrow. The yarn is very, very busy. It's got a lot going on, so there's no point in doing anything too fancy. but it gives it texture. You'll see tomorrow. I'm sorry. I also got some paints that I'll show you tomorrow, and tomorrow might be a little more that kind of thing. A little more my normal vlog and a little less my drama. But so I'm going to stop talking now. It's been long enough. And I'm not helping Leslie to spin longer with my talking on my vlog. So I'm sending my most healthy vibes to Leslie in her recovery, and to anyone else who's unwell and needs healthy vibes. They're coming from me. I'm thinking about you guys. I haven't responded to your comments of the last week, and I will eventually get them, but I have been reading them, your condolences and your heartfelt good wishes, and I do really, really appreciate it. I'm sorry I missed our Zoom call. I hope you guys Zoomed without me, and I'll be in touch with Valerie to schedule September Zoom. It won't be right in my mind. I'm thinking the 14th, but I'll find out from her if that works for her. The last weekend in September is probably going to be when we have the memorial service for my mother. Yeah, so it won't be that weekend. But meanwhile, I guess I'm going to go and start the rest of my day. Luckily, the cleaning crew came on Tuesday, so when I got home yesterday, the house was all clean, and it was so nice. It was really nice. It's nice to be home. It's nice to be home, even though home is where reality resides. Home is where reality resides, but that's where the puppy cuddles and the dentist cuddles happen too. And so they're more than enough compensation for being back in reality. And look, Dennis was so good. He took care of my flowers while I was gone. Everything looks beautiful. It's supposed to be a pretty nice day today. I think it's about at the high right now. It's supposed to not get much. I don't think it's going to get to 80. So it's going to be a lovely day on the deck. And yeah, I was watching TV last night. I was watching Lupin. I had started it, and I don't know why I didn't keep going, but I watched 4 episodes last night, I think, or 3. I watched 3 episodes. I had seen the first one, and I enjoyed it a lot. But I was sitting there for a while, and then I'm like, something's missing. And I realized, I'm not knitting. So I went and got my knitting. So I was sitting there watching TV knitting, and Dennis walks in. He says, "You're knitting." I said, "Yeah, I'm knitting." See how that goes. But you'll see tomorrow, because I'll show you my cowl. My road trip cowl. I wound the yarn on the road trip. The whole thing was road trip except for the buying of the yarn. I call it the road trip yarn. Road trip cowl. So I'll show it to you tomorrow. And some paints I got in the mail and things like that. So meanwhile, please, everyone, please heal well. Sending healing thoughts. Take good care of yourselves. Hug all the people who need hugs. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Please, please stay safe and stay safe.